How do you prepare for a nightmare when it comes dressed in routine? Riley Evans was 27, a nail technician, a wife, a woman who had built her life on calm rhythms, careful choices, and quiet love. She lived just outside of Atlanta, in a quiet cul-de-sac where the mornings smelled like coffee and cut grass, and the loudest sound after dark was the hum of streetlights. To outsiders, her life looked ordinary, peaceful, even enviable. Her husband, Brandon Evans, ran a modest gym downtown. He wasn't flashy, but he was driven. They had been together 5 years, married for 3. And though their love wasn't the loud, all-consuming kind you see in movies, it was real. Steady, dependable. They were partners. They split chores without arguing, shared grocery lists, took turns choosing the Friday night movie. Some might say it was boring, but to Riley it was safety. It was everything. They had talked about kids once, years ago. Long conversations under soft blankets, wine glasses half full. In the end, they both agreed it wasn't for them. They loved their freedom, their pace, their life just the way it was. Brandon even got a vasectomy 8 months ago. It was a decision, final and firm. One they made together, with confidence. Life had settled into a rhythm that felt like it could go on forever. Early morning smoothies, long work days, late-night Netflix binges, Sunday trips to the farmer's market. They were the kind of couple who didn't chase drama. They dodged it. Until the night the popcorn cracked her molar. It was a regular Saturday. Rain tapping gently on the windows. A blanket tossed over their legs. Riley reached for a handful of caramel popcorn without thinking. Then, snap, a sharp jolt of pain. She froze mid-laugh, hand to her jaw. Ow, she murmured, wincing. You good? Brandon asked, reaching for the remote. Yeah, just something with my tooth, she muttered. Probably nothing. But by morning, it wasn't nothing. By Monday, the dull ache had become a throb that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. So she booked an appointment. First available. Same dentist she'd had since high school. Dr. Mitchell Grant. Dr. Grant had been treating her teeth for over a decade. He was one of those doctors everyone trusted without thinking. Polished. Professional. The kind who remembered your dog's name. The kind who made jokes about flossing like a boss. He was a fixture in the community. Sponsored Little League teams. Donated to the library. Always wore a crisp white coat and a smooth, practiced smile. Riley never questioned his care. Why would she? He'd done root canals, extractions, never anything but kindness and competence. Going to his office felt more like checking off a box than seeking medical attention. That morning, she kissed Brandon goodbye with a quick be back before lunch. She grabbed her keys, slid on her sneakers, and headed out. No dred, no hesitation. No sense that the next few hours would blow her world apart. Just a woman with a toothache and an appointment. Just another Monday. Oh, if only she had known. If only she'd noticed the silence in the waiting room. The way the receptionist barely looked up. The missing chatter from the back offices. The eerie stillness that seemed to stretch across every corner of the clinic like a held breath. But hindsight is cruel, isn't it? It shows you every warning sign after it's too late to swerve. Riley was led to the back like always. The exam room looked exactly the same. Mint green walls, bright overhead light. The familiar were of unseen equipment. Dr. Grant entered with his usual charm. Soft voice, confident hands. He examined the cracked molar and recommended a crown. It'll be easier with sedation, he said gently. You've done it before, remember? She had. A couple years back during a root canal. She hesitated for a second. A flicker of something she couldn't name. But she shook it off. She trusted him. Why wouldn't she? She leaned back, closed her eyes, and let go. She had no idea that moment, that breath, was the last time she would feel safe for a very, very long time. The sedation took hold fast, too fast. Riley had done this before. She knew the drill. The numbing, the countdown, the blur. But this time, it hit her like a wave she hadn't braced for. Her arms grew heavy. Her jaw slackened. The light above her blurred into a shimmering halo of white. Then came the floating. That strange, untethered feeling where you know you're in a room, but your body feels borrowed. There were sounds, soft, mechanical, sterile. The clink of instruments. The distant murmur of voices. But they didn't quite connect. And then nothing. Time stopped. Or skipped. Riley didn't know. When she came to, it was like waking from the wrong end of a dream. Her mouth throbbed. Her tongue felt thick. The light was still above her, but now it felt sharp, intrusive. Her vision adjusted slowly. Her limbs, sluggish. She blinked hard. The procedure was over. She'd been moved. Her body didn't feel like her own, like it had been rearranged and dropped back in place. She tried to sit up and froze. Something wasn't right. Her underwear. It fell off, twisted, misaligned in a way that immediately set off alarm bells in her mind. The kind of detail your body recognizes before your brain catches up. A wrongness that whispers instead of screams, but refuses to be ignored. She tried to brush it off. Maybe it was the anesthesia. Maybe she'd shifted weirdly. Maybe. She looked over at the dental assistant, the same woman who usually joked with her about reality TV and nail polish. But today, she was silent. No eye contact. No easy smile. Just tense hands wiping down tools, moving too quickly, too deliberately, avoiding Riley like she might shatter under the weight of a glance. Riley tried to speak, something casual, maybe even lighthearted to cut through the fog. But the words felt stuck. The assistant handed her a bottle of water and pointed her toward the door. No explanation. No review of care. No post-op instructions. Just out. At the front desk, the receptionist didn't even offer a full look. Just a nod. A paper. A follow-up reminder mumbled through tight lips. Riley stepped outside into the sunlight, but it didn't feel warm. It felt indifferent. She walked to her car like someone moving underwater, each step stiff, each breath shallow. Once inside, she gripped the steering wheel, staring at her hands as if expecting them to explain what had just happened. But they had no answers. Back at home, Brandon was in the kitchen, protein shake in hand. How'd it go? She shrugged. Fine. Just a little out of it. He kissed her on the temple, told her to rest. And she did, curled up on the couch, eyes closed but mind racing. The ache in her stomach didn't make sense. Neither did the cold sweat, or the low hum of anxiety vibrating in her bones. But still she said nothing. Because how do you speak doubt into a room that only sees routine? How do you say, I think something was wrong, when you're not even sure what you're accusing? Days passed. She returned to work, polished nails, smiled at clients, pretended the fog had lifted. But it hadn't. The unease lingered. A soft tap on her shoulder every time she tried to forget. And then her body started changing. First, it was fatigue. Not the usual post-work drag, but a bone-deep exhaustion that made getting out of bed feel like climbing a hill. She blamed stress. Then the dizziness hit. Standing up too fast. Turning her head. Grocery shopping. Her balance wavered. Her breath caught. She laughed it off with Brandon. Guess I need to drink more water. But inside, she felt watched. Not by anyone else, but by her own reflection. And then the nausea, morning queasiness, random aversions. The scent of garlic making her stomach twist. Food she loved suddenly unbearable. Her appetite shrank. Her mood frayed. She was spiraling, and she knew it. Still, pregnancy never entered her mind. It couldn't. Brandon had a vasectomy, and they hadn't been intimate in weeks. Months, even. There was no gap in logic large enough to make that possible. But her period never came. 2 days late, then 4, and by the 5th day, the fear in her chest became too loud to ignore. She went to the drugstore in sunglasses and a hoodie, like she was hiding from her own reality. She bought the test without speaking, clutching it in her hands like it might detonate. At home, she stared at the box for 10 minutes before finally opening it. Hands shaking, breath uneven. She followed the instructions, set the stick on the counter, and backed away like it might bite her. 3 minutes. 3 long, suspended, excruciating minutes. She glanced back, once. 2 lines. Bold. Unmistakable. Positive. Her knees nearly buckled. A scream tried to claw its way up her throat, but it never made it out. Because how do you scream when you don't even have words? She sat on the floor, staring at the result, her heart racing like a warning bell. And in that moment, the last thread of her reality snapped. She wasn't just pregnant. She was impossibly pregnant, which meant Something impossible had happened. How the hell are you pregnant? Brandon's voice tore through the kitchen like a hurricane. His face red with fury. His hands fists at his sides. His words sharp, fast, panicked. I had a vasectomy, Riley. A damn vasectomy. Riley stood frozen at the end of the hallway, the pregnancy test still trembling in her hand. Her mouth opened, but the words wouldn't come. What would she even say? I don't know how, she stammered. Oh, really? Brandon's laugh was bitter, broken. You don't know how? Come on, Riley. Don't insult me. She shook her head, heart pounding. I didn't cheat. Brandon, I swear. Then explain it, he shouted. Explain how this is even possible. Because I've done the math, and it doesn't add up. And there it was, that bitter truth neither of them could make sense of. They hadn't been intimate in months. His surgery had closed the door on surprises. And yet, here she was, pregnant. Brandon paced the kitchen like a man cornered, each step echoing like a drumbeat. His voice cracked as he hurled the word again and again like a weapon, vasectomy. His trust broken. His reality shattered. You made me believe in us, Riley. You made me think we were solid. He looked at her like she was a stranger. And now this. Riley's eyes brimmed with tears, but she didn't let them fall. She couldn't afford to crumble. Not now. Not when her entire world was coming undone by a truth she didn't ask for. I didn't betray you, she whispered. But the silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Brandon grabbed his keys. I can't do this, he muttered, brushing past her. I need space. The front door slammed, and the echo lingered like an aftershock. Riley stood alone, staring at the pregnancy test still sitting on the counter, bold, undeniable. She was pregnant, and no one believed her. Not even the man who once promised to love her through anything. She collapsed onto the couch, pressing her hands to her stomach. Still flat, still small, but now the center of an unspoken storm. She didn't know where to go from here, but she knew she needed answers. The next morning, Riley sat in a sterile ultrasound room, her palms damp with sweat, her thoughts racing in circles. A nurse offered a polite smile as she applied cold gel to Riley's abdomen and pressed the wand against her skin. Within seconds, the flickering black and white image appeared on the screen. There we go, the nurse said softly. Heartbeat looks strong. You're about 6 weeks along. 6 weeks. Riley blinked. Are you sure? Pretty certain. Give or take a day. Riley's stomach turned. 6 weeks ago, to the day, she'd been in Dr. Mitchell Grant's chair. Sedated. Unconscious. Alone. She didn't hear the nurse say anything else. The air in the room thickened, pressing down on her chest. She clenched the edges of the table, trying to hold on, trying to breathe. She left with the ultrasound photo folded neatly in a white envelope. But she didn't look at it. She didn't need to. The math did it for her. She didn't drive home. Instead, she found herself outside her best friend's apartment, Tiana Brooks. Pajama shorts, fluffy slippers, a cup of tea in hand. Tiana took one look at her face and stepped aside without a word. They sat on the couch in silence. The envelope on Riley's lap felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Finally, she spoke. She told Tiana everything. The sedation, the strange fog, the assistant's silence, the misplaced underwear, the test, the dates. Tiana listened, her hands slowly covering her mouth as realization set in. Then she said the words Riley hadn't been able to say herself. Girl, you think your dentist touched you? The room went still. Riley didn't answer. She didn't have to. The memory of waking up foggy, disoriented of clothes that didn't feel quite right of the assistant who couldn't meet her eyes. The ultrasound, the dates, the math. It all pointed in one direction, one unthinkable direction, and the weight of it crushed her. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't some bizarre accident. Something had happened to her while she was unconscious. And if she was right, if Dr. Grant had done what she now feared he had, then this wasn't just betrayal. This was a crime, a violation of the most intimate, horrifying kind. Tiana reached for her hand, eyes blazing with fury. Then we find the truth, she said. We don't stop until we do. She hadn't slept. Not really. Riley lay in bed that night with the ultrasound envelope still unopened on the nightstand, her eyes wide in the dark, heart thudding like a ticking time bomb. Her mind looped the same question. How could someone do this to me and get away with it? She kept replaying the signs she ignored. The strange weight in her body, the twisted underwear, the assistant's averted eyes, the fog that clung to her hours after the sedation. She'd wanted to forget it all. She had tried to. But now the truth was cracking through the surface like something rotten buried too long. And it was time to stop pretending. The next morning, Riley sat at her kitchen table, still in her pajamas, the pregnancy test on the counter and the ultrasound printout in her hand. She opened it. 6 weeks. Confirmed again in black and white. And 6 weeks ago, exactly, she had been in Dr. Grant's chair. Not a day before. Not a day after. That's when she stopped doubting herself. Tiana was the one who said it first, what Riley had been too afraid to name. If he did this to you while you were sedated, that means he's done it before. Riley's stomach turned. What if I can't prove it? Tiana narrowed her eyes. Then we find a way. They spent hours talking through what happened. The details Riley barely remembered. The chilling gaps. And more importantly, the people who had been there. The receptionist. The assistant. Dr. Grant himself. There had to be something. A mistake. A moment. A trail. You know what I would do if this were a movie? Tiana said, voice low and serious. I'd go back. I'd pretend nothing's wrong. I'd get him to talk. Riley stared at her, and something in her heart shifted. She nodded. Then that's exactly what I'll do. 2 days later, Riley stood in front of the same building that now looked more like a crime scene than a clinic. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. She had booked a follow-up appointment under the excuse of lingering jaw pain. Something to check on the crown. The receptionist smiled politely. No suspicion. No red flags. Just another routine patient. But under Riley's blouse, a tiny audio recorder clipped to her bra. Tiana had helped her buy it. Helped her rehearse what to say. What to ask. How to stay calm. Because this wasn't just a visit. This was a setup. This was a mission for proof. Dr. Grant entered the exam room with his signature grin. Hey, Riley. Back already, he said warmly, flipping through her file. Everything about him was practiced. Smooth. Polished. Like he'd done this 1,000 times. But Riley was watching everything now. Every flick of his eye. Every pause. Every breath. As he adjusted the chair and leaned in to examine her jaw, she casually brought it up. You know, she said lightly, last time was weird. I don't usually react to anesthesia like that. I felt off for hours. Dr. Grant didn't miss a beat. He chuckled. Oh, that's common. Some people just have a stronger reaction. It's perfectly normal. He said it too quickly, too cleanly, like someone rehearsed. Then he added, almost jokingly, sometimes people even imagine stuff. Crazy dreams. It happens. Riley smiled, nodded, but her heart was screaming. Imagine stuff? Crazy dreams? It was the kind of line you feed someone to make them question their own mind, to plant just enough doubt to keep them silent. But not this time. She kept her cool, let him finish the checkup, walked out with a bag of dental supplies and another hollow smile from the assistant, who still wouldn't meet her eyes. And as she stepped into the sunlight again, the recorder still ticking beneath her blouse, Riley felt something shift inside her. She might not have a confession, but what she had, his calm dismissal, his gaslighting tone, his careful evasion, was just as telling. She had something. Now she needed more. That afternoon, Riley and Tiana sat in her living room, plotting their next move. We need DNA, Tiana said. From him. That's the only thing they can't argue with. Riley's breath caught. Ow! Tiana leaned forward. He drinks coffee, right? Riley nodded. Always has a paper cup. Break room. Tiana grinned. Then we're getting a coffee cup. The plan was simple. Bold, but simple. Riley knew Dr. Grant's schedule. After years of being his patient, she remembered his mid-morning break like clockwork. They showed up just after 10. Tiana played the distraction. She approached the front desk with fake enthusiasm about cosmetic whitening and veneers. She asked questions, laughed, kept the receptionist locked in a loop. Meanwhile, Riley slipped into the back hallway, phone clutched tight, nerves shot through with adrenaline. The break room was quiet. A fresh pot of coffee sat on the counter. And there it was, a single paper cup, lip print on the lid, fresh condensation on the sides. Riley didn't hesitate. She slipped on a glove, grabbed the cup, dropped it into a Ziploc bag, and slid it into her purse. Then she slipped out just as quietly. Tiana wrapped up her fake consultation, and the two walked out together like nothing had happened. But in Riley's bag sat the one thing that could change everything: a DNA sample. That night, Riley sent the cup to a private lab. She didn't include details, just two samples, her blood and the cup. The note was simple: determined paternity. Then came the waiting. Brandon hadn't come home in days. His gym bag was gone, his side of the bed untouched. And Riley didn't call him. She needed him to come back on his own, and she needed to know the truth before she could ask him to hear hers. The days that followed were agony. Riley checked her phone obsessively, morning, noon, and night. Every ding, every vibration sent her heart racing. But it was never the lab. It was never the truth. And in that silence, her world continued to collapse. Brandon still hadn't come home. No calls, no texts, just the hollow echo of his absence in the walls of a house that no longer felt like a home. His shoes were gone. His toothbrush, too. Drawer sat half open, where he'd pulled his clothes in a quiet fury. Even the framed photo of them at the lake, the one that used to sit on the entry table, was missing. Riley moved through the house like a ghost. Her stomach grew tighter by the day. The morning sickness worsened. But worse than the nausea was the waiting, the not knowing, the torment of living between suspicion and certainty. Until one rainy afternoon, her phone buzzed. New email. Subject: paternity results. She stared at the screen, hands trembling. Her breath caught in her throat. Her vision blurred. She tapped the notification. Then she saw it. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. The tested male is the biological father. Her body went cold. Dr. Mitchell Grant. Riley dropped the phone. It bounced off the couch cushions, but she didn't reach for it. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her mind recoiled like it had been punched, trying to process the confirmation of something she'd already feared but hadn't dared to believe. Her legs gave out, and she crumpled to the floor. Then the scream came, raw, guttural, the sound of something ripping in half. And the tears followed, violent, unstoppable, crushing. She had been violated, not suspected, not assumed, violated, and the life growing inside her was proof, undeniable. After what felt like an eternity, she crawled to the couch, clutching the phone in one hand, the lab result open again. It was real. It was documented. It was evidence. She took a breath, and then another. Then, with shaking fingers, she scrolled through her contacts until she found Brandon's name. She hit call. One ring. Two. Then he picked up. Hello. His voice. Distant. Cold. Riley tried to speak. Her lips parted. I have something you need to see, she whispered. Silence. It's not yours, she continued, her voice cracking. But it's not someone else's either. It's his. It's Dr. Grant's. But before she could say more, she heard it. The click. He'd hung up. Just like that. Not even a word. She sat there for minutes with the phone still pressed to her ear. It rang louder than any shout. But the next morning, she got her car. She printed the results, placed them in a manila folder, and drove across town. Brandon was staying at his brother's place. She stood on the porch for a long time before pressing the doorbell. When the door opened, Brandon stared at her, arms crossed, jaw clenched, guarded. He didn't say anything. She didn't ask to come in. She simply held out the folder. Just read it, she said quietly. Please. He took it, opened it, and then the silence changed. His brow furrowed. His hands froze. His eyes scanned the document, over and over. Then he looked up, not with rage, not with disbelief, but with something softer, something broken. Recognition. She hadn't lied. She hadn't cheated. She had been assaulted, and she had carried that truth alone. Brandon sat down on the steps like someone who'd just been hit by a truck. I'm so sorry, he whispered. Riley nodded. I didn't know what to think either. I just needed you to know. He reached for her hand. Just barely. But that small gesture felt like a crack in the wall between them. The next day, they sat side by side in the office of Monica Field, a sharp, steady attorney known for handling tough medical cases. Her office was neat, wood floors, minimalist furniture, and heavy silence. Riley spoke slowly, walking Monica through every horrifying detail. The procedure, the anesthesia, the aftermath, the strange behavior of the staff, the test, the ultrasound, the audio recording, the cup, and finally, the lab results. Monica listened without interrupting. She took notes, and when Riley finished, the attorney folded her hands, looked her squarely in the eye, and said 6 words that felt like a punch. "You were raped under anesthesia." Riley's breath caught. Brandon stared ahead, his jaw tight. Monica didn't sugarcoat it. She explained what needed to happen next. They had enough to launch a civil suit. But more importantly, they had enough to involve the police. The audio, the timeline, the DNA. It was enough to trigger a criminal investigation. There might be other victims, other cases buried in silence and shame. And now they could finally open the door. Riley swallowed hard. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Let's do it." It happened just after 8 a.m. Unmarked cars pulled up in front of Dr. Mitchell Grant's dental clinic. Quiet, precise, intentional. Inside, staff were just beginning to settle in. Machines hummed. The receptionist arranged files at the desk. A dental assistant wiped down trays. None of them expected what came next. A team of detectives from the Atlanta Police Department's Special Victims Unit walked through the front doors with a search warrant in hand. No warning. No time to hide anything. Patients were calmly escorted out. The waiting room was emptied. The clinic was locked down, and the silence inside was shattered. Dr. Grant emerged from his office, a coffee cup in one hand, his surgical mask still hanging from his ear. But when he saw the officer's badge, warrant, gloves, his face didn't register surprise. Just stillness, like he already knew. They didn't cuff him yet. Not then. First, they started searching, room by room, cabinet by cabinet, computer by computer. In the storage closet, they found vials of sedatives that weren't listed in the clinic's controlled substance logs. Some were unlabeled. Others were stored in zip bags. There were no patient records, no tracking numbers. Nearby, used syringes, scattered, hidden behind boxes of disposable gloves. In the digital records, they uncovered chart entries with missing notes, blank appointment fields, and sedation doses with no corresponding procedures. Then came the security system. When detectives pulled up the internal surveillance files, the footage from the day of Riley's appointment, the full day, was gone. 12 hours. Completely deleted. Manual override. Logged 2 days after her visit. The timestamp confirmed it. It wasn't a glitch. It was a cover-up. That was enough. Within the hour, officers read Mitchell Grant his rights and placed him under arrest. He didn't ask why. He didn't deny it. He didn't even blink. He simply handed over the coffee cup and held out his wrists. By noon, the story had broken across local news. Atlanta dentist arrested in shocking sexual assault investigation. DNA confirms dentist father-child with unconscious patient. The headlines were just the beginning, because what Riley had triggered was an avalanche. The next day, Monica Field's office got a call. A woman from Decatur. Soft voice. Trembling. She'd had a dental procedure 6 months earlier. Light sedation. Routine cleaning. But hours later, she felt a burning sensation in her lower abdomen. The kind of pain that didn't match the procedure. She developed an infection that lingered for weeks. No one could explain it. And now, she couldn't stop thinking about what she hadn't remembered. 2 days later, another call. Then a third. One woman remembered waking up in the chair with her blouse buttoned wrong and her bra clasped over the outside of her shirt. She'd laughed it off as clumsy staff. But now, it felt like something far more sinister. Another described a missing IUD. She'd gone in for a routine consultation. Days later, she was in her OB/GYN's office, stunned to learn it was gone. Removed. Without her consent. None of these women had reported it, because they hadn't known what to report. Until Riley. Until her baby. Her audio recording. Her courage. Until the truth kicked down the door. The civil case was now a class action lawsuit. And the criminal charges? Mounting. sexual assault of a sedated patient, abuse of medical authority, tampering with evidence, unlawful sedation, destruction of security data, and the biggest one of all, rape under anesthesia. The prosecutor assigned to the case didn't hold back. This is not just a violation of ethics. It is a grotesque abuse of medical power. He weaponized trust. He preyed on silence. He turned a place of care into a hunting ground. Riley watched it all unfold from her living room. She didn't speak to reporters. She didn't post online. But she watched. And so did Brandon. One morning, he broke his silence. He opened his Instagram and posted a photo of the news headline, Dr. Grant in cuffs, and beneath it just one sentence. She didn't cheat. I had a vasectomy. He's a predator. It went viral within hours. Thousands of shares. Tens of thousands of comments. Some still doubted. Some still speculated. But others believed. And more importantly, they saw Riley for what she truly was. Not a liar. Not a cheater. But a survivor. In the weeks leading up to trial, Monica built the case like a fortress. Riley's pregnancy timeline. The DNA proof. The audio recording. The deleted footage. The testimonies from other women. Each piece snapped into place like puzzle edges, sharpening a horrifying picture. This wasn't a one-time offense. It was a pattern, and Mitchell Grant was about to face it under oath. By the time fall arrived, it wasn't just Riley's story anymore. It was a movement, a reckoning. What started as whispers had become a storm, and that storm had a name, Mitchell Grant. Every week, more women came forward. Some were younger, some older. Some had repressed their unease for years. One even remembered waking up mid-procedure, her mouth numb, but her body aware, paralyzed, disoriented, terrified. Another woman recounted being told she needed full sedation for a simple filling. She didn't understand why at the time, but she trusted him. He was the expert. She'd known him since she was a teenager. Sound familiar? It was Riley's story in different packaging. Same methods, same setup, same excuses. These women weren't seeking headlines. They were seeking truth. And for many, Riley's case was the validation they had never dared ask for. Because finally, someone had proof. And that proof had cracked the mask wide open. Riley didn't ask to be the face of the case. She didn't want her name in headlines. But Monica Field explained something important. You're the one with irrefutable evidence. You're the reason the system is finally listening. If you're willing, your voice could protect every woman too afraid to speak. So Riley said yes. She sat for interviews with investigators, recorded depositions, walked through every chilling memory she could muster, even the fragments she'd tried to bury. And when her hands trembled, Brandon held them. He was back now. Not perfect, not healed, but present. He'd started spending nights at the house again, helping prep meals, making lists for the nursery, changing light bulbs she couldn't reach. At first, they barely spoke. But one evening, while painting the baby's room pale yellow, he paused and said, I didn't believe you. I didn't even try. I'll never forgive myself for that. Riley looked at him, tears threatening again. But this time, she let them fall. Just don't leave again, she whispered. And he didn't. The media wasn't gentle, but they were relentless. As more victims joined the civil suit, Riley's name began surfacing in court documents. Reporters dug. Social media speculated. And finally, her identity hit the public. Her photo, her name, her face. Some praised her. Others questioned her. But Riley stayed off the internet. She wasn't doing this for strangers. She was doing it for the women who couldn't. For the girl inside her who would grow up one day and ask where she came from and deserve a story that ended with courage, not silence. Meanwhile, Monica built the courtroom strategy with surgical precision. She used each victim's statement to draw a map, a pattern that showed this wasn't a moment of weakness, but a deliberate predator system. All of it lined up. The overuse of sedation, the quiet staff, the disappearing records, the IUD removals, the altered clothing, and then Riley's evidence, the timeline, the audio, the DNA, the deleted surveillance footage. It was all there. The monster behind the white coat wasn't a mystery anymore. He had a name, a motive, a history, and soon he'd have a courtroom across the country the case sparked outrage. Patient safety advocates held rallies. Medical boards began emergency reviews. Twitter trended with hashtags like hashtag trust shattered and hashtag patients not prey. People couldn't believe this had happened under sedation in a clean, quiet clinic without anyone noticing. But Riley? She wasn't surprised anymore. She'd lived it. And now, she was ready to say it out loud. Under oath. Face to face. With the man who had taken so much from her sitting just feet away. The courtroom was packed. Press lined the benches. Courtroom sketch artists hovered over their pads. Every eye, every lens, every breath pointed to the front of the room, toward the woman at the witness stand and the man in the defendant's chair. Riley Evans took her seat with slow, deliberate calm. She wore a pale blue blouse. No makeup, no jewelry, just the weight of her truth, stitched into every word she was about to speak. Across from her sat Dr. Mitchell Grant. No lab coat this time. No warm smile. Just a gray suit, a tight jaw, and dead, glassy eyes. The room was heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. And then it began. The prosecutor's voice was clear, steady. Ms. Evans, please tell the court what happened the day of your dental appointment. Riley swallowed, then spoke. She described the cracked molar, the decision to undergo sedation, the trust she had placed in Dr. Grant after years of routine visits, the fog, the disorientation, the off-kilter underwear, the assistant's cold silence. She told them about the pregnancy test, the ultrasound, and then she told them about the DNA. A murmur rippled through the gallery when she said it. The father of my child is Mitchell Grant. I never consented. I never had a choice. Then came the audio. The court played the recording of her follow-up visit. The moment she brought up how strange she had felt. His light laugh. His dismissive tone. People imagine things all the time, he'd said. The prosecutor paused. Is that what you were doing, Ms. Evans? Imagining. Riley's voice didn't waver. No, I was violated. Then it was the defense's turn. Dr. Grant's attorney was slick, clinical, detached. He tried to poke holes. Suggested Riley's memory was unreliable under anesthesia. Suggested she had motives. Suggested that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't telling the whole truth. He brought up her marriage. Implied instability. Questioned her emotional state. But Riley didn't flinch. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just kept telling the truth. Next, the prosecution presented the DNA results. A lab specialist testified. No doubt. 99.9% match. Then the digital forensics expert took the stand. They walked the jury through the security system. How 12 hours of footage had been manually deleted 2 days after Riley's visit. No backup. No accident. It had been scrubbed. Intentionally. Then came the victims. 3 women testified, each with her own horror story, each echoing the same sick pattern. Oversedation, disorientation, confusion, shame. One woman broke down on the stand as she described waking up and realizing her bra was unclasped under her scrub top. The jury sat in frozen silence. One of them wiped a tear. When Dr. Grant's team finally called him to testify, the air shifted. He took the stand with calm detachment. He denied everything. Said Riley must be confused. Said he had no idea how his DNA could be involved. He blamed lab error, misidentification, even hinted that someone could have stolen a cup from his office. But the jury wasn't buying it. They could see it in his eyes, the lack of remorse, the mechanical delivery, the rehearsed empathy. There was no confusion in Riley's voice, but his, all deflection, all fiction. In closing arguments, Monica stood and faced the jury. This man used sedation not as a tool of care, but as a weapon, she said. He didn't make a mistake. He made a choice, over and over again, until one brave woman said enough. She pointed at Riley. She brought us truth. She brought us proof. All we ask is that you bring justice. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. For hours that felt like 4 days. Riley sat with Brandon at her side, Tiana behind her, her hands trembling in her lap. Then, the courtroom doors opened. The jury returned. They filed in silently, somberly. The foreperson stood and read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Riley exhaled. The air in her lungs felt new, like she hadn't truly breathed in weeks. Brandon reached for her hand. She didn't look at Dr. Grant. She didn't need to, because justice didn't require her gaze. It just required her truth. At sentencing, the judge didn't hold back. This case represents one of the most chilling violations of medical ethics this court has ever seen, he said. You used anesthesia as a cloak. You used your title as a shield. And you left a trail of trauma behind you. 30 years. No chance of early release. Dr. Grant didn't blink. His wife filed for divorce within days. Moved out of state. Took their children. Said nothing publicly. His dental license was revoked. His name stripped from every registry. He was no longer a doctor. He was a predator. And now, he was a prisoner. For Riley, it wasn't closure. Not entirely. But it was validation. Her story had been doubted, dissected, dismissed, and still, she stood. Not broken. Changed. Yes, but not destroyed. And now she could finally look ahead to something that looked like peace. The nursery was quiet. Soft morning light poured through pale curtains. The walls were painted a warm yellow. A mobile of tiny stars spun lazily above the crib. And in Riley's arms, a sleeping baby girl. Her chest rose and fell with the rhythm of safety, of innocence, of new beginnings. Riley stood still, holding her daughter close, heart full of a silence that wasn't hollow this time, but peaceful. It had been months since the trial. Months since cameras flooded the courthouse. Since Dr. Mitchell Grant was led away in shackles, his name forever burned into court records as a warning, not a legacy. But life didn't stop with the verdict. It kept going, quietly, tenderly, like a wound closing. Riley's delivery had been private. No media, no drama. Just her, Brandon, and a team of doctors who treated her with care and dignity. The birth wasn't easy. The pain was layered. The grief still lingered in the corners. But when she heard that first cry, sharp, defiant, alive, something inside her shifted. Not everything was healed, but something had begun. Brandon had come home weeks before the baby was born. Not all at once. Not perfectly, but with intention. He moved his things back in, helped repaint the nursery, asked about doctor appointments. He showed up, and when Riley went into labor, he was there, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, catching her when she faltered. When their daughter arrived, he cut the cord with trembling hands. And when the nurse placed her tiny body in Riley's arms, Brandon whispered, "She's not a mistake. She's a miracle." They named her Noelle, not after anyone, just a name that sounded like hope. Riley sometimes found herself awake at night, watching her daughter sleep. There were still moments when the darkness crept in, when the past tapped her on the shoulder. But now there was light, too. There was the weight of a baby breathing against her chest. There was Brandon's quiet footsteps in the hall. There was the sound of laughter between bottle feedings and diaper changes. It wasn't the life they had planned, but it was a life they were building together. One evening, Riley stood in the doorway of the nursery and watched Brandon rock Noelle in the old chair by the window. He looked up. "She won't remember what happened," he said softly, "but she'll know the truth. When she's old enough, we'll tell her." Riley nodded. Not just what happened, but how he fought, how he survived. Brandon smiled. "She'll grow up strong," he said, "because she came from strength." Outside, the world moved on. Headlines faded. News cycles spun. But in this house, in this quiet, yellow room, there was something else. A kind of justice no courtroom could deliver. The kind built in moments. In second chances. In love that didn't walk away when things got hard. Riley placed a gentle kiss on her daughter's forehead. She whispered words only a mother can whisper. "You are not your beginning. You are our future." And in that whisper, the storm finally passed.